If you caught part one of this series, you know we're talking about a 1971 memo, a blueprint for how corporate America took control of our democracy from the inside out. It started with a strategy, not violence, with money, not laws. And one of their first targets? Labor. Because unions gave working people power, and the Powell memo told them to take it back. This is how the American dream was gutted. How one generation went from pensions, job security, and rising wages to gig work, medical debt, and working 2 jobs just to stay broke. It didn't just happen. They planned it, they executed it, and they started with the workers. This was phase 1 of the economic war outlined in the Powell memo to dismantle anything that gave power to ordinary people. And nothing terrified them more than organized labor. Back then, in the early 1970s, unions were strong, wages were rising. A single income could support a whole family. You could afford to buy a home. You could retire with dignity. Powell saw that as a threat, not to the country, but to corporate dominance. So he laid out a plan, not just to slow down labor, but to destroy its foundation. Here's how they did it. First, they attacked the image of unions. They funded media campaigns that painted labor organizations as corrupt, lazy, or radical. That's from an old playbook. They turned public opinion against the very people fighting for better wages and working conditions. Then came the laws. Backed by the business lobby, politicians passed legislation that made it harder to organize, easier to bust unions, and nearly impossible to strike without retaliation. I belonged to a union and was informed that if we went on strike, we would all be fired. It was the law. Now I understand how that became state law. The result, in the 1950s, about 1 in 3 American workers belonged to a union. That's 33%. Today, it's less than 10%, and in the private sector, even less. And as union power collapsed, so did wages. But here's what makes it worse. Workers didn't suddenly become less productive. In fact, American productivity skyrocketed starting in the late 1970s, but the profits didn't go to the workers who generated them. They went to the top. From 1979 to this day, worker productivity went up 60%, and average hourly pay? It barely moved, just 17%. That's the wage theft of an entire generation by greedy corporations. Now add in outsourcing. Corporations, emboldened by Powell's memo and the free market ideology it spread, pushed for trade deals that let them ship jobs overseas where labor was cheap and laws were weaker. Towns that once ran on steel, textiles, and auto manufacturing were hollowed out, and the workers left behind were told it was their fault for not adapting. But this wasn't about innovation. It was about exploitation. It was about crushing labor, slashing costs, and inflating profits, no matter the human cost. And today, we're living with the consequences. Jobs without benefits, no health insurance, no retirement plan, no paid time off, just a paycheck if you're lucky. The rise of the gig economy. Companies like Uber, DoorDash, Instacart, and others don't hire employees, they hire independent contractors. That means no job security, no sick leave, and no legal protections. You're paid per task. You cover your own costs, and you can be dropped from the app without explanation. It's not flexibility, it's exploitation pretending to be freedom. Working multiple jobs just to survive. People work 50, 60, even 70 hours or more a week and still can't cover their rent or groceries. But by pensions, retirement is now your responsibility, and if you can't save enough on your own, tough shit, kid. The removal of safety nets, with unions weakened and the social safety net shredded by this Congress, you're on your own in a system built to protect wealth, not people. And but by stability, one emergency can ruin you financially, and that's the goal. Meanwhile, the people at the top have never been richer. This was not inevitable. It wasn't globalization. It wasn't technology. It was strategy. A long game strategy that started with a memo and ended with a country where working full-time doesn't guarantee you can eat, pay rent, or see a doctor. They crushed labor to concentrate power. They stole your raise to fund their yachts. And they're not done. But here's the truth. Every right workers ever had, from the 8-hour day to child labor laws, was fought for and won by organizing. And it can be done again, because if they could destroy it in 50 years, I think we can rebuild it faster. If we name it, if we fight it, and if we refuse to settle for scraps while billionaires feast on our labor. They didn't stop at wages and unions. Their next move? Go straight to the source of knowledge itself, the classroom. In part 3, we'll break down how they took over the schools and blamed the teachers.